Leadership today often feels like a race we are all trying to win. Faster results, quicker decisions, constant urgency. But what if true leadership wasn't about speed at all? What if slowing down actually made us more effective? Now, there's a principle borrowed from elite training and combat readiness that says slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It reminds us that when we move with clarity, intention, and presence, results come more powerfully than when we rush. Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend Podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today I am joined by someone who embodies this very principle in both business and life. From the call center to the C suite, from being a CEO to completing 5 Ironman races, Dusty Holcomb has lived the tension between urgency and intentionality. Now, through his work as founder of the Arcqus Group, he now helps leaders trade burnout for clarity and misalignment for momentum. So, together, we are going to explore how this principle translates into everyday leadership and what it means for anyone, for anyone trying to lead with purpose in a noisy, fast paced, ever changing world. So, Dusty, welcome to the show, and I'm really, really pumped up for our conversation on this.
Sana, thank you so much. It's delightful to be able to speak to you, and I love that we're going to explore this topic because it's one of the hardest things to do, but one of the most impactful when we take the time to really embrace the idea of the slowing down to be able to move fast.
Totally, totally. Um, uh, so Dusty, let's go back into the origin. I mean, uh, was this something that you knew from the beginning, from the beginning of your journey as an entrepreneur, or as an adult, or I mean, when was the first time that you came to hear about this phrase, or you started to explore what exactly does it mean?
Yeah, it's interesting, and you mentioned this in your lead in. I had the privilege when I was a very young boy in my early mid teenage years. My brother and I got into competitive shooting, and so we got tucked under the wing of someone who had been sergeant major with the Army Marksmanship Unit, and he taught us how to shoot. And he said, "Hey, we're gonna work on everything very slowly because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Before we try to learn how to do things quickly, before you try to win the match, what I want you to do is win the fundamental, win the practice of an execution at the smallest level, and then the speed will come." And it was only years later, as I was working through leadership challenges, that I recognized the wisdom that came from that learning when I was, 16 years old, which is in order to be impactful, we have to slow down. We have to um, take time to work on the fundamentals to get clear in our head so that we can go fast. And it's not something I knew from day one, but it was certainly something that was given to me as a gift, and then, through experiences and lots of lessons and hard knocks, I learned how to connect those dots and make it a life principle now
Mhm.
that I help leaders unlock as well. It's amazing how powerful it is.
It is, Dusty, and it's almost counterintuitive, because like slowing down to move faster, and especially when I think in the context of leaders who are burned out, it really feels like that ability to pause and reset. It's kind of lost somewhere in that all noise and clutter of hustling, because um, it's natural that when we hear this, we will think, if I slow down, I lose. This is not the time to slow down. It means that I'm weak, and I don't know what to do. So
Mm.
I mean, what you're describing, it sounds like a permission to do exactly like that. And have you received any kind of skepticism around this? Like the one just I mentioned, that if I slow down, then I lose. I cannot afford to slow down or lose.
Yeah, it's very you're exactly right. It is a counterintuitive principle, and it is challenging for people to embrace, and I'll be completely honest, it's challenging for me to execute sometimes because the world moves fast, and there's always this relentless, list of things coming at you, things you need to do, and the challenge is you're never going to get done. And so the real thing is, are you working on the most important things? And yes, I have received skepticism, and people will say, "Well, how am I supposed to get it all done if I slow down?" And then my kind of question back to them is, "Well, how do you know you're working on the most important things? What is it that you're actually doing?" And if you take 10 minutes today to slow down and optimize your time for the most important things, is that more important than reacting to whatever comes up? And when people try that, it's always amazing to me that it's just such a simple principle, but it's very difficult to execute. But when you try it and then you practice the discipline of slowing down, it's almost like things start to go faster, and you're making progress and speed on the things that really matter, not the things that might matter to someone else, or not the things that create motion but don't create results. And I think sometimes in today's world, we're so addicted to motion, we're addicted to action and energy, we lose the ability to connect that to outcomes that matter. And yes, there is always skepticism, and sometimes I'm a little skeptical even myself, and I have to install systems that force me to focus. But when I
Mhm.
do that and do that well, and it's now part of my ingrained operating system, it makes all the difference in the world.
Mm, that's impressive. And since let's talk about application. But before that, I'm really interested to explore. I mean, how did applying? I mean, you have been in some of the high pressure leadership roles, like in a CEO role, Ironman races. How did applying this principle shift your own approach?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with the personal and the Ironman races. So it's very easy when you're racing something like that. It's 140.6 miles over the course of 12 hours, 13 hours, to get overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you're doing. And you have to break it down to the next thing that matters. And so when you sign up for a race, you're signing up a year in advance, and you can do one of two things. You can go, well, I'll worry about it tomorrow, and then suddenly you're not ready for it. Or you can say, okay, what's my plan? And then what do I need to do today? I don't need to do more than I'm supposed to do. I don't need to overreach, but what do I need to do today that will build to where I want to be? And I think that the most important mental shift here, and I think it very much aligns with this idea of slowing down to be focused on what matters so that you can go fast, is, and I'll use the example when you get in the water for the swim in the Ironman, you have a 2.4 mile swim. Well, you don't get in the water and swim 2.4 miles. Well, at least I don't. I didn't grow up as a classically trained swimmer. So for me, it was like I was just trying not to drown. Well, when you get in the water and you swim, you don't swim 2.4 miles. You swim to the next buoy. You swim to the next marker. You're always targeting the next thing, and you're just focused on swimming smooth, a smooth stroke. And I can't think of anything that's more representative of this philosophy than the sport of swimming. Because when you get in the water and you try to muscle the water, and any of your audience that is a swimmer will understand this, if you try to
Mhm.
muscle the water, you actually slow down. But when you relax and you focus on being smooth, that's when the speed comes. And if you've watched the Olympics or if you watch these world class athletes, it's almost effortless in the way that they move because it's so very smooth. And they've trained themselves to do that. They've broken it down into very finite steps that they've practiced and rehearsed and built. And so thinking about it in the chunks that matter and then executing those small pieces exceptionally well that creates an additive and building effect. That's where you get the speed. That's where the speed comes. The speed is a result, and it's built by setting in place the right objectives, the right goals, the right tasks that you need to accomplish along that way. And the same thing happens in the CEO seat. And there's the adage that leadership is lonely, and it's very, very true. But sometimes there's a lot of value in that solitude to think and to give yourself the opportunity and space to reflect. I mean, when you think about it, the CEO role and the founder role, the chief executive, whoever it is, the entrepreneur, they're often chief doing officers. And the real lens here you have to think about is, am I doing the right thing? Am I giving myself the time and space to focus on those things only I can do? And yes, there's always going to be a crisis, and there's always going to be a challenge, and there's always going to be things that try to distract you from the most important thing. But if you've given yourself principles and grounded yourself in a system that allows you to even take 10 minutes to pause before you execute, before you commit, before you do that next thing, you can ensure that your stroke is smooth and that you're gaining speed in the water, not just trying to work harder. Because that's where I think most leaders and most entrepreneurs and folks that struggle with burnout, and I've been there, really run into problems with, is when you try to outmuscle it. You just try to work through, and there's value in grinding, but you can grind yourself down, and you can't do that. You're actually diminishing your effect. You're trying to outmuscle the water, and it just doesn't work.
That's so, so vividly and beautifully put, Dusty. Especially the how you kind of created a picture in my mind. I'm very sure it will also appear in our listeners' minds when they'll hear this. I mean, that's such a beautiful way to put it. Is marathon running also kind of similar? Because I have had a few conversations on, especially on how we see marathon like a mile based, a part by part, mile by mile running.
Hmm.
Is it you can also seek inspiration from? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I think so. And so it's funny that you asked that. I was just having a conversation with a friend last week about the marathon that he most recently ran. And, in marathon running, we talk about the wall, and the wall happens between miles 18 and 20, where your body physically runs into the wall, and your mind is what gets you through the process. And so the marathon, the challenge he was sharing, it was he went out too fast, and so therefore, when he hit the wall, he'd burned his body out, and he really struggled over the last 8 miles of the marathon. And so that's one of the challenges, like, when I ran, I don't know, it was New York City Marathon a number of years ago. I remember looking down at my watch at the beginning going, "I am going way too fast." And it's natural. You get all the adrenaline, you get it's exciting, and you don't run your game. You don't run your race. And I think that that's one of the reasons I like endurance sports so much. And I think that they're a wonderful metaphor for business, is because you have to run your race, and you have to have your plan, execute your plan, and run your race, not worried about what anybody else may be doing. Yeah, in business, we have to pay attention to competition and all those things, but we have unique value that we're creating, and we have to make sure that we're bringing that to bear. And it takes discipline, and I think that that's the most important aspect, is not only the discipline to slow down or the discipline to recognize when you need to, but the opportunity and the training to allow yourself to see it when it's happening. Because I think that's where most folks, myself included, struggle, is you don't see it in time. You don't have a circuit breaker that allows you to see that you're caught in reactive burnout mode, as opposed to step back, reflect, and then execute more effectively. And perhaps that just you need to take a long walk, but you gotta have time and space to do that. So I think it absolutely applies to marathon, and I think the sports and then the endurance sports are such wonderful metaphors for business because we're in this for the long game, not the 1 mile sprint.
True, true. I couldn't agree with you from that. Um, yeah, and if I would like to add my own reflection into this, I think it's less about slowing everything down and
Mm,
more about finding the rhythm in there. So the
mm,
crucial decisions, they aren't rushed because not even in business perspective, Dusty, but in personal context also. If I think my rushed decisions have been the most rec- reckless ones, and the ones which have really affected, changed my life. But then yeah, I always try to extract the good things, the important learnings out of those random decisions or really fast decisions that I had to make. But the execution, it stays smooth. And I think that's this nuance a lot of leaders, they miss. um,
mm.
this is something we definitely need to bring more and more into the light. The
I
next
think that's
part.
let me if you don't mind, I think that's such a wonderful point because by having giving yourself the time and space to think and decide in advance what's important, when you do get that moment where you do have to make the fast decision, it's much
Mhm.
easier, it's much smoother, and it's much more impactful. So I think that's an exceptional point you just brought out, and I do think it would be something that as leaders think about this to really reflect on. It's not about slowing down. It is about giving yourself the ability to go fast when it matters because you've done the work in advance.
Exactly. Exactly. Super. And now this part is, to me, it's one of my favorite, kind of topic of discussion. The servant leadership connection, Dusty.
Mm,
You often talk about servant leadership, serving, not being served, which
mhm.
to me is so beautiful. I mean, how does slow is smooth and smooth is fast connect with that? I mean, does serving others require us to intentionally slow down?
Well, I think I'll put it in the form of a leadership reaction. If
Okay.
you react to a stimuli and you go in and you have someone, there's a situation that's happened and you assume that you understand and you start barking orders, you start assuming you're right, you start attacking the problem, then you might you're going straight to fast. But if you
Mm,
go in and you understand, hey, help me understand what happened, help me understand where we are, help me understand what you're thinking about, help me understand what I don't know. And we're approaching to ensure that the person is successful. And like, don't get me wrong, sometimes the person's success isn't in the organization or in the seat that they're in, but we're
mhm,
optimizing for success at the personal level because when they're successful at doing that job, the organization is successful, the customer is happy. That's what we're really going for here. And so giving yourself the opportunity to serve by slowing down to ask the right questions and not going straight to fast as a reactive state is absolutely a case of service because what you will do if you just go straight to fast is you'll train people to react to your fast questions and fast actions, not
mhm,
think for themselves and prepare for the right answers. So it is a deep connection, but it requires the person to understand going in. I need to understand, and there are cases where times I need to be understood first, but those are the exception, not the rule.
mm. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's the hard part, right? Because um people we want both. I mean, the human
Mhm.
connection and then performance as well. And it really, to me, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Dusty. It sounds like you are saying the principle isn't just philosophy, It is a way to make both possible.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely not a philosophy. It's a you by understanding the value that comes from being very intentional,
Yeah.
you can go faster because you're able to ignore the things that don't matter. You're able to zero in on the things much more quickly that do matter, and you're able to connect dots more quickly. So it's not a philosophical, kind of pie in the sky aspirational thing. It is something that when done creates absolute speed. So yeah, almost every sport, almost every um, athletic endeavor will have someone watching film and slowing down. I mean, film is slowed down so we can see what happened, and then we can make adjustments. And so when teams struggle or when teams aren't winning, what do they always do? They always go back to the fundamentals. What are the fundamentals of the game? What's our footwork look like? What is our core blocking look like? Whatever the game is. And so when you think about it as the ability to execute, it's absolutely not philosophy, but it's a plan of execution that puts the intentional effort in place first that allows you to move much more quickly in the game when you're playing, and it gives the leader the opportunity to pull up and navigate, because leaders often get pulled down, from 50,000 feet down to 5 feet, and it's really hard to go back and forth. But when you give yourself the time, the space, the opportunity to know when you should go slow, you can absolutely laser in and go fast when you need to. So, not a philosophical thing, very much an intentional execution practice.
Definitely. Definitely. Superb. Superb. So, Dusty, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about the resources that you're providing, what would be the best way?
The best way would be to visit our website, arcusgroup.com, ARCQUS group.com. And we put together because we see leaders struggling with all of these things, specifically around burnout. I mean, burnout and the speed and pace of our world today, those are symptoms. They're not the root cause of the problem. We put together a very simple assessment for leaders that they can take. It's for free. They get it all on our on the website to give them a sense of where they may be experiencing a gap and how they might be able to solve that. And they can just find that at burnout2breakout.com, and burnout2breakout.com, take the free assessment, and they can dial in on how do they break free from the chaos that's holding them back.
Superb. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes for our listeners, easy reference. And Dusty, thank you so much for helping us see leadership through that lens. And you really, really, helped us uh, think, believe that leadership, it isn't a sprint, it is an endurance race. And like any endurance sport, pacing ourselves is the key to crossing the finish line strong. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a delightful conversation. I can't wait to learn more and from you, and appreciate the opportunity today.
Definitely, definitely. So to all the listeners out there, as you lead, whether it's a team, company, or even just yourself, remember that the real speed comes from clarity, not chaos. May you give yourself permission to slow down so you can lead with greater impact and longevity. Until next time, this is Sana with BizBlend, where we talk about the business of life and the life of business. And to connect with Dusty, just refer to the show notes along with this episode on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.